Welcome to T-Minus Attending, and I'm your host, Dr. Shishir Shah. I'm a wound care specialist, entrepreneur, private equity operating partner, proud father, and educator. Our goal at T-Minus Attending is to empower new and experienced medical professionals to lead better and live better so they can fulfill their personal professional lives as they grow into their careers. This is our second series of eight episodes, and today we'll be talking about leading in the operating room and your support team. With me, I have Dr. Buddecke. He's a board-certified foot and ankle surgeon living in Nebraska. He has faculty appointments at Des Moines Osteopathic Medical Center. He's published numerous papers, presented over 50 lectures in various aspects of foot and ankle surgery. Working in the wound care arena myself, I work with foot and ankle surgeons all the time, so I know the beauty of what they do and the importance of how they help lower extremities and limb salvage, and just a great field and a great industry. Welcome, Dr. Buddecke. Appreciate you joining us today, and really excited about our conversations.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing currently and your current role.
Well, I practice in Omaha, as you mentioned. I did grow up in small town western Nebraska. Did my undergraduate training here in Omaha, and then I left and did all my medical school training and residency fellowship. My fellowship was trauma reconstruction. So as foot and ankle doctors and surgeons, I do think that one of the most important things that we do is wound care, like you're so well versed. My practice is not that. I do a lot more trauma reconstruction, but I do have partners that do the wound care part, and I think that's probably one of the most important things that we do. I've been in practice for a little over 20 years now. Through that part, it's been private practice, but I've really enjoyed the academic portion of what we do as well. I do a lot of lecturing, a lot of teaching. I'm very involved with the American College of Foot and Ankle Surgeons, and do a lot of academic work with them and for them.
Wonderful. So it looks like you have many hats. Obviously, you're teaching students, or educating your faculty, and then obviously, leading a big team in the operating room. And, as you know, we're talking about leadership today, and all the things you're saying really resonate with me and our audience because, when you're working with team members, there's so much dynamics, so many things going on. And I don't know about you, but I didn't get any formal training in leadership or business or management training, what it's like to work with a team. As you know, when we go through medical training, fellowships and so forth, it's all about the patient and about differential diagnosis, skill sets, exams, stress, long hours, but it's not about how managing yourself and managing people. As you know, we rely on a lot of people that work with each other. So I really want to learn about that with you and your perspective and your team today, and share that with everyone, because the support staff we work with and your cohorts are just a big part of what you do, especially in a foot and ankle reconstructive trauma setting. It's a lot at stake, as you can imagine.
Absolutely.
What does your support staff consist of? You obviously have office assistants, MAs, LVNs, OR techs. Tell us a little bit about how that looks and how you work with them.
Yeah, well, in the clinical setting, obviously we have our private practices. So in order to get to the operating room, we've got to see these patients in clinic. Mm-hmm. I have one of the greatest medical assistants ever. She's been with me for a little over 15 years now, and she's definitely my right hand. She makes my world and makes my day easy, easier than it would be if I didn't have her. When we have staff meetings and office meetings, I always tell our group, I said, the front staff, the reception desk, the telephone, that's the eyes and to our practice. So that's where everything starts. We got people that are coming to see us for foot and ankle issues, right? So they're probably not really the happiest people in the world because they're hurting or something happened. So they're in pain or they're nervous because they're unsure if they're going to need a surgery or whatever. So it starts up front with those people. By the time they get back to see me, they've had interactions with front office staff and potentially billing and even management. Well, then they'll see my assistant, thankfully. So when I see them, they've already had their, they've kind of made their opinion about the office probably at that point. So then we just go through, and I always tell them, so I can give them the best care in the world, but if they don't feel comfortable doing that, which starts with my support staff, then it doesn't make any sense. So then when we get to the operating room, obviously there's a great team there. It's amazing the number of people that go into having an operation. So patient shows up before surgery at the hospital. They have to go through the preoperative staging and the preoperative, or what we call perioperative nursing staff. They're getting that patient ready. They're making sure that this patient is healthy, ready to go through surgery, and all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. So that's where it starts. And then, of course, anesthesia. I don't do my job without the help of anesthesia, whether they're obviously putting these people to sleep for me. The thing that's changed in the last 10, 15 years, when I was training, the worst place to be in the hospital was the recovery room, because everybody was in pain, everybody was miserable, and screams and cries, and it was just horrible. Now it's not, because we do so many blocks in the lower extremity, and I'm sure they do upper extremity stuff as well, but our anesthesia crew, wherever I operate, they're doing blocks now so when a patient wakes up, they're waking up without pain. They're waking up numb. Obviously, that's going to wear off at some point, but that makes a big difference in the recovery. So anesthesia is a big part. And then, of course, when we get in the operating room, anesthesia keeps them to sleep. My nursing staff, my assistants, my scrub tech, they're doing everything to make my surgery go as smooth as possible. And so, yeah, I do the work, but they're the ones that make or break you. And when you have a bad nurse, when you have a bad scrub tech, or they're having a bad day, it doesn't help. So anything we can do to kind of, and fortunately, I have great teams wherever I go. I love the places that I go, and I pick those places for that reason, because they have great support staff. So it just makes my world easy. When everything's going smoothly, it makes the patient care so much better.
Well, you mentioned so many things in there. I don't know if our audience appreciates it. There's so many nuances, and I like to tease them out because I think they're quite interesting, and it's not as simple as you make it sound, in terms of I just go where there's great people to work with and they do good work for me and things are great and anesthesia is doing this. The one you obviously mentioned, there's a village, right? There's a village of people, or cloud, or an orchestration of people that are making things successful for you. But these days, as you know, people have opportunities to work elsewhere, do other things, work with other people. And obviously, we all, I talk this quite a bit in our series. We have a common mission, right? We're helping patients, doing good things, but we're often stuck with people we have to work with because it's a job. But we have the option to leave. The fact that you mentioned your MA has been with you 15 years says a lot about you, says a lot about what you're doing. But I'm sure she's not just working for you; she's working for what you're doing for somebody else, and seeing through you, with you. And I think that's amazing, because I think that's part of the support that she's probably getting from you, vice versa. How do you take care of her so that she stayed with you 15 years and she's engaged with that? Can you share that connection you have? Can you explain that a little better?
Yeah, over that time period, it's funny how it started. So I had a different assistant. Her mother was the manager we had at that point, and so kind of hired her to get her in the office, try to get her going. And they just naturally put her with me for whatever reason. I'm not sure why, but as she was training, she was hearing certain things about me. And it's funny, we talk about it now. It's like, okay, he likes things a certain way. He's very, very somewhat OCD. And I'd like, as she knows now, we've talked about that. I go, I kind of need to be. That's kind of what I want my surgeon to be. I want them to be very detailed. So that was kind of whoever was training her was kind of teaching her that. So the first day she comes to work with me, with my other assistant, she was going to be a second assist. She was so nervous. She was scared to death to work with me. And it's really funny because I just was like, well, why? I mean, I've never yelled at anybody. I've never hit anybody. Nobody's ever died working with me. Yeah. So we joke about it. And she says, yeah, all I heard was you like this way and that way. And I go, well, of course. And now she knows that. So she goes from being scared to death of me. And now my joke is I'm scared to death of her. She's now my boss over the course of years, but she's like my little sister. I mean, that's what our relationship has grown to be. We know when each other's grouchy. We know when each other's happy. We know when something's not quite right, despite trying to hide it. And, you go in and put a bold face on, but we're still human. We have good days and bad days, and we just, our patients deserve to always get our good day. And so we try to make that happen. And so we know each other pretty well. It's pretty fun. And every time there's a new assistant that comes into our office, I tell that story about how Taryn was just completely scared to work with me. And now she just kind of tells me what to do.
Isn't that how it works at home too? You mentioned this is such a common theme with my physicians, and I'm sure we'll have some female physician colleagues on, but you hear the same thing, that it resonates like the relationship at home. If you have this work spouse kind of thing where you sort of know each other's language, you know how to read them, you can call them out, and then there's almost a level of equality where you feel comfortable saying what you need to say to get the job done, and there's a mutual respect. I think when you have that and you develop that, some of the boundaries go away and you respect each other. I think that's what I'm hearing here, that good things happen, and it's just more natural. And it's not so much I'm the boss thing, but it's about, let's do good things, and I like working with you, or vice versa. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's really what I'm echoing here.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's hard to do. You said, we come in there, we have good days, we have bad days, we got to maintain those relationships, and they can keep you in check, and keep them in check. And you obviously sound like you're very busy, and you may have trimmed down a little bit because you do academics, but at the peak of your career in terms of work hours, how many hours a week were you putting in?
I don't really know. I can kind of give you a little example. Like, I know it was funny. I had a really good friend of mine now, but at the time he was 2 years younger than me, and I was in training, and he was a student that came through, and he was just trying to get a gauge of what we did and what it was going to take to, live in this profession. And so he calculated, while he was there for a month, he kind of watched my hours from week to week. He would ask me, what time did you get here today? And what time did you leave? And just did it nonchalantly. Like, I didn't know what he was doing. And in fact, he didn't tell me till a few years later. But he said, when you were in the hospital, that each week you put about 90 hours a week in the hospital. And I didn't have a clue. I didn't ever look at that. But and he goes, did you go home and do stuff? I said, well, of course I did. We were training. We had to learn. So he goes, so you spent 90 hours a week in the hospital and then went home and did more. I said, yeah, you put the time in then. And I certainly don't do that now. My hours are not anywhere close to that. But when I first started in practice, I was at the office many hours, 5 days a week. And then you had call on the weekends, depending on what it was. Fortunately for foot and ankle, what I do, we call it gentleman's trauma. Most of the time we don't have to go in. Most of the time the emergency physician can send it to us. Occasionally there's that car accident where something's really bad where we have to go in, or the bad infection, as you know, can call you in. But if I had to guess, I would guess I was probably putting in 50 to 60 during the height of things. Now I probably don't even do 40. And that's in the office. I do a lot of stuff at home because of the academics. I went to a 4-day work week about 4 or 5 years ago. I always planned on doing that when I was 50, and I didn't quite make it to 50. But part of that reason was my assistant had a younger daughter, and daycare was becoming an issue. And so she came to me with a few things, and I said, let's just change it up a little bit. Let's watch our numbers. Let's see what 4 days a week looks like. We became more efficient. We added some hours in clinic on those other 4 days. And our bottom line didn't change a whole lot looking at it. We were definitely more efficient. And since doing that, I've tried to have friends and colleagues. That's like, this is the magic thing. I mean, there's no such thing as burnout with a 4-day work week. And at least I can't see it in the future. So I'm lucky to work 40 hours a week in the office. Now I do a lot of stuff at home. So I come home now, I'm an empty nester, and I can't sit in front of the TV or in front of my phone. So I do a lot of work at home too.
Wonderful. I think you said something that, sort of in line with what happened to me, certain family events, personal events, you said you had childcare issues and so forth. I had my first daughter, and I realized this is pretty neat. This whole father thing is pretty neat. And you're not prepared for that either, just like you're not prepared being attending. And there's a lot of similarities in how you manage people and how you manage family life. And if you can balance the two, and you realize that, we're pretty efficient what we do as clinicians, whatever healthcare field you're in, we are able to push the envelope. And that means even being more efficient and pushing it and squeezing your days and still accomplishing what you do, getting career satisfaction, and then going home and taking care of what you're working for, right? Because what are you working for? I mean, that extra few $1,000s, a few hours a week is not going to change your life very much in terms of the material things that you can acquire. But the happiness factor, the longevity, that's a big thing I believe in. It sounds like you were trying to work towards that. Eventually you got to that in your terms and your time frame. And we all have our clocks. We have hurdles and things that come in the way of our dream plan in life and career. But I think, like you said, if we focus on and we prioritize those things, it makes us good at work, right? It makes us highly functional. And then you have career balance, right? You're teaching now, you're doing family things, and you're still at the A game.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I mentioned that, my assistant came to me with some of those daycare things, and, we just changed it, and it was for her, yes. But I also had, at that time, my kids were younger, still around and very involved in sports. And I was lucky enough to spend that time to coach them in different things. And then of course, attend all their games, which I love. And I still miss that dearly. So it gave that option, having the Fridays off, and Fridays where I can still, if I need to put a case or two on Friday, I love it because, I get up, get a couple cases in, and then I have the data to do what I need to do. also gave me the chance Fridays where I could fly out of Omaha and get to where I would need to be to give a lecture or teach a course. So that was great. Or hit that Friday afternoon game or Friday evening game with my kids too. So it worked out beautifully. I thought, were there some sacrifices? Yeah, but I didn't look at them that way then, and I still don't. Like I was offered or asked to get into some leadership roles for some of our, for the American College of Foot and Ankle Surgeons, and at the time, I was doing quite a bit, and still am, and I'm doing more again because my kids are gone. But I declined several times just because I was my kids were so busy with their schooling, but the sports that I just loved to watch and knew I was going to be. There was limited time with that. So I passed on and thought, you know what, if it comes back around to me again and I feel like I can do a good job, I will entertain that option again. If it doesn't, I'm okay with it.
I just love talking about this because every time you say something, there's a layer of onion behind what you say. What I'm catching from this is the power of no. We are so used to saying yes, especially to our patients, and we often don't know where to say no to professional opportunities, extra call, extra shift, extra patient in the schedule, extra day of work. We know we got things to do at home. And so we say no to nobody. Even our families will say, we'll make it to that. We'll make it to work. We'll see the patient. We'll do the 90-hour work week. And somehow we'll still have our sanity and be good people, good leaders, good influencers for the people around us. And you have to say no to something because this is a marathon. This is, a long journey. And burnout, it's a big deal, right? In our industry, talk about time. In fact, I don't usually get on this kind of tangent, but I lost a physician colleague, a young guy in his 30s. I took his life just 2 weeks ago because he couldn't manage it. It was all I had at him. He had a lot of debt. He didn't know how to manage the stress of the new family life and the job. And that's why this discussion, what we're doing here at T-Minus Attending, is so important because you and I, I'm sure we've had a similar story. We talk about the struggles, the tough nights, the tough weekends, the stress points, and you got to say no to certain things. You got to take a balance. You got to take a breather. You got to put yourself in check because then you're just the better human being, that better person. And I just love how you indirectly kind of imply that. You said you made the time, you made the break, you saw that 4 days because and you're still working. You look very young. You mentioned you crossed 50. I was thinking you're right around 50, but whatever as you look, you're aging well. And that also says something because we work with colleagues. They don't age so well because they take so much upon themselves, their health, their stress, their diet, their sleep gets compromised. So I wanted to share that today because I think there's so much deeper than what you just suggested on the surface.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And thank you so much. We come from a generation, my family was blue collar and, you had your dad that, you just work. And that was the thing. And if you didn't, there was no such thing as taking time off. And if you did, it was very little type of thing. So it was just kind of work. And so I have, really good friends and colleagues that they're same age group. And they're like, I talk to them and their wives will talk to me going, hey, how do you make him slow down like you did? And, you have that conversation and their response to me is like, well, I got younger partners. I got to set an example for them. So they do. It's like, okay, you've done that. When is enough? And well, I'm training these people. And so I need to be available for them. And so it's difficult. And I think when you go into a job and, like I said, all my friends and colleagues, we're trying to be the best of the best. We want to be number one. And, you put so much into it. And then how do you all of a sudden just say, okay, I'm there. And how do I back down a little bit again? And I'm seeing really good friends and really good colleagues like having a hard time to slow that down a little bit. Fortunately, I did it. But yet on the same token, I'm not done. I'm still, I sat down with some friends and we put down, we talked about our goals, personal goals and professional goals for the year. And I have, some lofty goals that I'm far from done. I still want to produce for this foot and ankle world. And I think I could be an asset still for that. So even though we're slowing down, I think it's, maybe it's a 4-day week, but I'm still working as hard as I am 4 days a week than I did 5. So we're not done for sure.
You're working smarter, not harder.
That's exactly right.
You said you think you have more to offer. I'm sure you have more to offer for sure. It sounds like a lot. And I think that says something too. I'd like to maybe go that direction. We're, type A players. We're always doing something, trying to be at the best of our game. And you mentioned like you've changed your lifestyle a little bit. You've balanced the clinical surgical work to a little bit of education and personal time, but you have a long runway. It sounds like you may have another 20 years in you, and in a different way, maybe not the hours, but you're going to stay active. What does that future look like? I mean, not to hold in on your next year's goals, but in general, how would you recommend going about that, and what are you doing for yourself that you can share with others?
Great question, and something I think about all the time. One, the timing to be done, and I still feel like I don't feel old by any means. I'm trying to do everything I can to find that fountain of youth, just for my job, for my kids, for everything. But one, just keep seeing patients, and the goal is to let's make somebody happy every day. Let's make 5 people happy every day. Let's make 10 people happy, and keep going. Make them feel better. They're coming in limping, they leave not limping, or over the course of maybe a day or a month or 6 months or whatever. That's still absolutely the goal. Take good care of patients, make their day better. Academics is still going to be huge. I still, we're looking at some different things to publish as far as what we're passionate about with regards to, the science of medicine, thinking, as I read new stuff and I see new things and I go to lectures, I'm going, are we overdoing that? Is that good? And so then that means, well, I have to research that. I have to look at that. And so we've got ideas jotted down left and right. So I want to keep doing that forever. And as long as I get asked to lecture and do these things, I want to be able to do that, because that's what keeps me motivated. I'm doing a few more legal things. I've been asked to look at some cases. It's another aspect of medicine that I think is really, really fun, because one, you get to look into the how other people are doing things and what they do right, what they do wrong, and it makes me a better doctor, a better surgeon. There's no doubt about it. I'm defending a case right now, and I told this doctor, I said, this will make you better. I said, I know it's not fun to go through this right now, but it's going to make you better on the other side of it. And bottom line, when you went into that, see that patient that day, you still did the best for them that was possible. And I think they did the right thing anyway. I don't think there's anything problematic there, but you just learn every time you step outside the door every day of your house, you're learning something new. And I don't ever want to quit learning. I have a whole bunch of hobbies that I do, and that's what's given me the chance to take the time to do it. But I still don't want to be done and do those all day, 5, 6, 7 days a week. I still want to go to work and see people and be an asset to society.
Boy, I think, we probably live parallel lives. I've never met you before this today, and you briefly about you. But you sound like you do a lot of things. In fact, I do the same. I'm involved in legal med mal defense work, and like you, I teach. And what I find with a lot of folks like us is, especially what I call mid-career or late mid-career, is keeping it spicy, keeping the variety, gives a longevity. That brings everything together, because leaders don't quit, right? I mean, if you look at an NBA All-Star, sports, if you look at politicians, they don't quit. You fall back down, you get back up. You try different things, you go different ways. You re-engineer yourself all the time, every day. You adapt, you grow, and you find new things, and you explore, and you go on the edge. Like you said, you just started doing some defense work and some med mal work. That's going on the edge. If you've never done that before, it's scary enough to ever receive a letter that says, you got subpoenaed or whatever. But it's just as scary to defend and look at something and say someone else's livelihood is relying on your expertise, and you got to be at your game, and you got to be able to talk about that. So those are all great, I think, learning points for our audience that keeps a life in balance, that keeps a life in check. It makes you better as a clinician, because you're learning by looking even differently in a different perspective on anything you do. And that's what a leader does. They don't give up. They look at different things. They continue to grow. And if you become stagnant, I think the people around you realize, I probably don't want to be this way, because, there's an average. The common saying is, you're an average of the 5 people you hang around with, or you're with, or you spend time with, or work with. And if some of those 5, 2 or 3 are not where the direction you want to go in, or not providing you personal satisfaction and growth, that's a problem. And I think a leader has to constantly show that growth within themselves, so the other people are seeing that, even though you're not telling them that. What's your thoughts on that? That's at least what I'm seeing when I think of myself, and I see a little bit of that in you.
Yeah, I think you said the word stagnant, and I use that the thing about getting comfortable. I don't want to be comfortable,
right?
And that's the stagnancy, right? I mean, it would be really easy to. I've been doing this long enough now. Get up on Monday morning, I go in and see a bunch of patients, give them the best care that I can. I go home, and you rinse and repeat, and you do it again.
Yep.
Well, if that would just get it would just get grueling. And so and things I tell my kids is like, get comfortable being uncomfortable. So that's for me is, okay, let's say yes to a lecture. Now that means I have to come home, I got to read, I got to research for this, I got to put it together, and I could be, watching the game on TV or whatever. And it would be really easy doing this for 20 plus years now to do that. But I keep telling myself, no, I'm not going to do it. When, I get an email from an attorney that says, hey, would you be willing to look at this case? And I know it's going to take time and it's going to do this. I could say no pretty easily. And that's something I was like, no, because I'm going to learn on this case.
Mm-hmm.
And so the key is, not, like you said, not being stagnant. And for me, I just don't ever want to get comfortable. I've been doing it long enough. It would be really easy to get comfortable. I see that with some friends and some colleagues, I think, and I don't want to do that. So, and then the second part of that is not only not being comfortable, but don't settle for mediocrity either. And my kids will, I can see them rolling their eyes now because I hear it so much from me. Mediocre is a dirty word in my house. It's like, there's no reason to ever be mediocre at anything, right? If you're going to do it, I don't care if you're sweeping floors in the gym. I don't care if you're, taking care of patients. Let's do it to the best of our ability and make it be the best at it possible. And, those are the things I keep telling myself every day. It's like, okay, having a bad day, I could go in there and just go through the motions, and my patients deserve better than that. So I will never do that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, this has just been a great conversation, and we're coming up on time. And I wanted to just ask you, we've learned a lot, right, growing up and going through this career and going through healthcare, maturing in the industry, failure, successes. What would you like to at least share with the audience on maybe a good success point or failure point, advice that you'd kind of give your own child about to embark on a career in medicine, leaving residency, the unknowns, just a fatherly kind of advice? What would you give?
I guess the thing that I would look at is, and it's hard. I think it's really hard right now. I think it's like my son right now he's planning on going into the medical field at some point, and he's kind of going through stuff. He's in an anatomy class right now in college and undergraduate, and he's texting back and forth, or we're calling back and forth about anatomy things. And, he didn't do so hot or as good as he wanted to on that first test. And so it's like, it's going to, it's easy to hear it, or for me to say it, it's hard to hear it. It's going to help you in the long run. So for me, high school, I always knew I wanted to go into medicine. At that point, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what it took. And so I never took a book home in high school. I was there to play sports, and that was all I did. I was maybe smart enough to get by and do what you can, but middle of the road. I was classic mediocre. I didn't work hard at anything school-wise. But yet I was able to go to college, do the same thing. College, I had to learn how to study because I never did it in high school. And so you get that first failing grade in chemistry or organic chemistry. You're like, oh, this is I'm gonna have to do a little bit of work. So you fail a little bit, and you got, well, if I don't figure this out, there's not going to be any medical career in my world. So you figure it out, you get better. So I guess the point I tell people is, just because you fail once here, or you're average and you weren't top of your class, you just keep battling, and persistence wins over all the time. If you just stay persistent and don't give up, it always wins over. So same thing, get into medical school, and now something clicked where I just became just an absolute nerd. My head was in a book all the time. Some of the other things kind of were non-existent because I did. I was in my head was in a book all the time, and it paid off. And that's where I'm telling my son right now, it's like, it pays off. Keep doing it. It pays off. And then you get to go do all these other things that your dad gets to do and play and all that stuff. So I guess the fatherly advice would be the things we've talked about. Don't get comfortable. Don't be stagnant. Don't be mediocre, and just persist. Persistence is the key.
I love it. And I love that closing remark. You don't have to be the smartest guy, just be the hardest working guy or girl, and you'll come out ahead in whatever you're looking for. And that's a wonderful takeaway, because that's what leaders do. That's what we do in healthcare. We grow, we learn, we work hard, and you're never going to be the best at everything. And that's okay. That's wonderful. Dr. Buddecke, it's just wonderful talking to you. And I'm sorry it's kept short. I'd love to even have a good bite or a drink with you and talk, because this is just a pleasant way to meet a colleague and hopefully a friend. So
yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.